Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Politdigm podcast. My name is Red, and today I'm joined by my co-host Alpha.
Hello, everyone.
And today is the 7th of August, a Monday, which means that a new blog is out for you to read, and it is about gerontocracy. I'm probably going to misspell that. I'm going to missay that so many times this episode. It's not an easy word for me. And I still need that dyslexia diagnostic. Uh, yeah, so we this week's blog is about gerontocracy, and for those who don't know what it is basically old people in power. It's I don't think we've really touched that topic uh, during
Yeah,
uh, during any podcast, but it's definitely yeah an important topic, mostly because it's something that really affects us, and most of us don't really have that sort of aren't aware of it, right? Okay, so basically the blog starts with some facts. We mostly talk about the U.S. because it's honestly the best example of of a gerontocracy, because it's well, first of all, it's one of the biggest powers, and because it's something that affects us a lot during when it comes to like um, just a global level, right?
yeah.
So for example, the median age of a politician in the US is the age of 65. That is pretty old. That is pretty fucking old.
You might call it geriatric.
I mean, yeah, that's where the word gerontocracy comes
Who
from.
would have thought? That's
Yeah. But yeah, for example, a lot of people make fun of Nancy Pelosi. Yes, she's pretty old. She is, I believe, 84, I think. I might be wrong on that, or 86. If you could check Alpha, but yeah, she
right.
is older. Joe Biden. Sorry,
What?
it's from that one meme, that random
He
fact.
is 83.
She's 83. All right.
Jesus Christ.
Joe
He
Biden
doesn't
is
look 83.
82. Then you have, for example, Mitch McConnell, which is 80, also 82, I think, or 80. I don't remember. Um,
No, me
but
neither.
uh, but yeah, and then you have the oldest. And I don't know if it's the oldest, but somebody that's been on the news lately, which I forgot her name. She's a senator, and her name is like Patricia, I think. Uh,
Trisha?
so hold on. I'm Googling it. I should know this. I'm really bad at remembering names. Uh, no. Hold on. The thing I'm searching up on Google is hilarious.
Yep.
You will not know what it is. Uh, wheelchair. He's in a
What?
wheelchair. Yeah, like it's like she. Uh,
Ah,
uh.
yes. A wheelchair.
Fuck's sake. She had like some sort of medical difficulty or some shit. Not even close to what I was saying. Her name is Diane Feinstein. Yeah, that's it. She is 90 something.
Ooh,
Uh,
really
yeah,
pushing it.
she is pushing it. Uh,
She is pushing it, all right. Sorry.
she's 90, which means that she isn't even a boomer. She's older than a boomer, right? She's before a fucking boomer. I don't even know what that is.
She is prehistoric.
She is dying. But yeah,
We love old people.
she basically had this like a medical complication, which meant that for 3 months she couldn't take care of herself, where she couldn't be in the Senate, and then during that she's still responsible for making laws. So for you to remember that she can't take care of herself, she probably can't even get up from her wheelchair to go to the bathroom alone, but she is able to make rules that affect U.S. citizens. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah,
That ain't good. That ain't good.
um, there was also this situation where during the Senate, when they were voting for a law, as some of you will know, when you're in the Senate, basically how you say that yes, I approve this is by going I, right? And like her helper or like her, I don't know, whatever. I guess she has like a caretaker or something. I don't know exactly how that works or who the person was. Basically, had to explain to her how to vote for what was happening because she just didn't know. She was just like there, just like sitting there, like,
Oh,
huh?
that is
Uh,
scary.
then you had a Mitch McConnell, which allegedly had a stroke during a speech, which just he just saw the voices. The voices became real, and he just stared into the void for a couple seconds. And people were like, "All right, yeah, this is not great." And that's what motivated me to writing about gerontocracy because I was kind of suddenly kind of got into this area of politics, mostly the U.S. politics, which then led me to looking more into gerontocracy, because I was like kind of fascinated about it, not in like a oh this is awesome, no, more of like a more morbid fascination of being like
Yeah.
oh this is horrendous. But yeah, gerontocracy obviously dates all the way back to the Greeks. It dates back a lot of a lot of thousands of years. What was it, like 2,000 plus years, right? You're the history guy here. But
I mean, the Greeks were around for a long time.
no, but like ancient Greece. But
Oh, ancient Greece, yeah, plus 2,000 years. Wait, let me
but
fact check this.
basically, if correct me if I'm wrong, Plato, who basically had this idea that like oh like the older people are like wise, so therefore they should be the ones in power, and that has been something that unfortunately has continued throughout history because in ancient Greece basically you had the older men, the more wise men, they were the leaders, and then you had the subservient men, you know, the ones that went to war, the ones that manual labor, etc. And
I think it was Socrates actually who was like, we should respect the old people. But I don't know about the people in power. But I'm gonna believe in you.
I think it was. I mean, I did some research about it, and
Yeah.
when I was researching about the origin of it, that's what came up. But regardless, it's a very old concept. It's not something that's new, not something that's like hip and wacky. Quite the contrary, it's old as fuck and outdated. Just like the politicians. Um, and that's basically what we talk about in the blog. We talk about how it's an outdated way of governing the world. It can't keep going because it's quite clear that it's not working. In the past, the USSR was a gerontocracy, and that's basically what led to its downfall.
Yeah.
Because leaders were old as hell and they weren't really in touch in what was going on, and that led into shit going down.
Yeah.
Um,
Also, you were right. It was Plato
a
who said it was the young man's nature to submit and the
yeah,
old man's nature to rule. And I just want to remind you all
it's pretty
that
gay.
the Greeks also had
It's pretty.
this custom where older men would teach teenagers how to be men.
Yeah, by
And
having hot passion sex.
yeah, but
Uh,
we're talking about teens. We call that
yeah,
we call that pedophilia nowadays. But that's another topic.
yeah, but yeah, basically, it's something that doesn't work. It's and the biggest issue when it comes, for example, the U.S. is mostly the reason why it's mostly older people in power. Apparently,
Capitalism.
34% of the American population is over the age of 50. Yet the politicians, 52% of them are over 50. There's a clear, overrepresentation of older politicians in the U.S., and most of them are not, close to 50. They're closer to the 60s to the 70s. So they're quite
Yeah.
old. And whilst there's nothing wrong, and we're not advocating for let's just cap the age at like that a person can be a politician at like the age of 60 and be like all right, yeah, now you're old and senile, go fuck yourself. That's
Uh,
not what we're saying. That is definitely not what we're saying because that's not democratic. That's not fair for those people because there could genuinely be good politicians that are older. For example, Bernie Sanders, he is an older politician which has very good takes. You might not agree with
yeah.
100% with him, but generally he is a very great politician. If you compare him to the other ones in the US, he's amazing. He believes in welfare. He believes in social welfare. He believes in free healthcare for everybody. So he's a great example, right? Or sort of a bad
And
example
he
if you want to.
looks like a great guy.
Yeah, and he still is pretty old. Is pretty fucking old. um,
Yeah.
so just because you're old doesn't mean you're a senile conservative. So yeah, you can't be like, oh yeah, let's just fuck every old person. No, that's not what we're trying to say.
Yeah, that's
Uh,
not how it works.
but like everything, it's a system. It's a system, and there's reasons why they're there. First of all, these older politicians are usually backed by corporations, which obviously means that they're basically sort of puppets of big oil, of big pharma, etc.
Lobbying.
Yeah, lobbying, which corruption, and so that's one issue, and that is kind of goes hand in hand with another issue, which is they have financial incentives to be there. Most of these politicians are there because it is financially beneficiary for them, for themselves, and obviously the people that back them. They constantly pass laws which benefit themselves and their own generation, and not particularly any other generation. You can see that in, for example, how nowadays it is insanely difficult for anybody that's of younger generations, mostly like millennials, or now starting which is starting to happen, Gen Z, to actually be able to buy a house or anything. Um, and so and that is not a problem that happens to boomers. Like back in the day when a boomer was younger, right around the age of 20, when they were young, basically all of them could buy houses because, for example, I believe I saw today a statistic that, for example, in the UK, when boomers were a teenager, or when not, well, young adults, right, they their house cost about 3 times their salary, whilst nowadays a millennial, to buy a house, it costs 8 times their salary.
Yeah.
It's the salaries haven't really gone up, whilst the price of everything has gone up.
Yeah, the
Uh,
cost of living has risen exponentially while the salaries have, if
yeah,
anything, just stagnated.
and
And
it's
that's the main problem because we just have a bunch of old people, especially conservatives, who just say, "Oh, it's these youngsters that are not working,"
yeah,
while
which is
you are a university student having 3 jobs, trying to pay student loan debt, and living on your mom's porch.
it's bullshit. So and the issue is that obviously boomers don't have issues because they have sort of they have the pillars to stand on. They have built sort of a what's the word, like a
I
structure
don't know.
on being able to stand on the without these, with these rules in place, because they worked, they've worked for many decades now, and so
Or
they are not affected by these issues. They're not affected by, because they've had houses, maybe a house for decades. A lot of them are landlords, so these rules don't affect them. In fact,
just
they
to clarify, we're talking about rich boomers,
yeah,
not every boomer. I'm sure there's a lot of older folks that have a lot of problems too,
yeah, but
especially when it comes to housing.
the issue is that those are not the important generation, and that's a very harsh thing to say, but it's true. We should never focus on the primary focus should never to be to buy to make the priority of politics the older generations. It needs to be the future generations, because those are the ones which are going to keep us going. That is
I think
something
it
that
should be all the generations. The thing is that we are sacrificing the younger generations
yeah,
because they are incompatible, that's the word,
that's
incompatible with a lot of
conservative
the
ideals.
way of the views of life that these older people have, because the world has changed exponentially at a rate never seen before, and the change that needs to accompany when it comes to these people, the change that they need to undergo to try and reconcile with this world isn't easy at all. Like, I
Yeah,
live with my grandparents; they're pretty adept at the current modern world, but still, I hear the back in my day talks.
yeah. No, but like what I was trying to say when I said like focus on the next on the the younger generations, I don't mean just the younger generations. I mean focus on making a better world for the future generations, the ones that aren't even born yet, because at the end of the day, they're the ones that are going to come next. They're the ones which are going to have to deal with with our mistakes. They're the ones that are going to have to make the world a better place. And we should never, when making laws, when you know doing all these things, we should never think of, oh, let's preserve what we have right now. We should always think, let's try to see how we can make everything better? How can we improve? How can we make sure that everything is ready for the next generation? And that's what
Yeah.
we need right now. Like it's something that is very dire. It's not something that's like, oh, we should probably start focusing on making, the world a better place for the future generations. No, it's not something that we should start doing. It's something that we need to do right now. We should have done it yesterday and the day before and the month before and the year before, because the reality is that, which is a thing that we touch on the blog, is that one of the biggest impacts that gerontocracy has is, for example, global warming, because
Yeah.
these older generations clearly don't give a fuck about it. Most older people don't. First of all, because their generation was kind of told, grew up with this idea that global warming wasn't really an issue. They also grew up in an era where, where basically oil burning was like this
Yeah.
like this luxury in a weird way. It was kind of like the center of society. It was like this idea that, oh, you find oil, you're rich, burn it, sell it, and do all these different things. Whilst
And we go back to lobbying, like the lobbying of these big oil companies
yeah,
to a lot of politicians.
and our younger generations, we recognize that yeah, oil industries doesn't really work. In fact, no matter, if I think about all the people that me and you, Alpha, know, or the people that we know individually, well, at least from my side, obviously, I don't think that no matter who I can think of, no matter how quote unquote conservative they can be, I don't think there's anybody that I can think of that goes like, yes, burning oil and doing all this shit is good. I don't think there's a single person that I can think of, even if they're
I
conservative
know
as fuck.
one that thinks it's not bad, which isn't great either, but that's the limit for me. And I know a lot of far right people.
So it's most of us understand the ideas behind global warming, and our generation generally understands it. Doesn't
Yeah.
mean that they understand it 100%. We talked about that in the last episode if you want to go watch that. But to briefly summarize it, we basically said that, yeah, like all of us are aware of global warming, but not all of us are aware of exactly what causes it, but the real reason behind it and how we can fix it. And that's kind of the issue when it comes to our generation. But when it comes to the older generations, that's not the case. When it comes to the
Yeah.
old generation, we have an entire sort of population, or a chunk of the population, which, first of all, just believes it doesn't exist,
Yeah.
which
It's the work
is,
of the Antichrist.
and they think it's like, China trying to do some sort of coup,
Yeah,
which
the
I,
communists.
I
It's always the
don't
communists.
which is pretty weird because it's like one of those, there's like certain conspiracy theories where you can be like, all right, I can kind of understand where they're coming from, even though it sounds like bullshit. Like, for
Yeah.
example, like the moon landing, you can kind of understand, like, oh, okay, it was the US trying to, like, you know
Yeah. The
like,
JFK
was
assassination,
trying
for
to
example.
was trying to, like, like, sort of show that they have a big dick, right? And that they could have faked it. No, but that's
Yeah,
like
John F. Kennedy like
it,
screw them up bad
it's
when
like
it came to the moon race.
they could have they could have faked it. There was a reason, like a sort of a good reason to do it, but that doesn't mean they did it, obviously. But there's certain conspiracy theories which are so dumb because they have no logical reason behind it. It's
Yeah.
like, why the fuck would China be lying about this? It's like, oh,
Yeah, I saw
because
one that says that soy milk is turning people into femboys.
oh yeah, that's a really old one by now. Like, but yeah, well, that's pretty funny. It's just because like soy stuff has like estrogen, which
Yeah.
is
That and giants. There's a lot of theories about giants for some reason.
I don't really look into that deep into. I look into like political conspiracy theories, not really like
I'll be
myth.
honest. I saw a 9-hour video about about a conspiracy theory iceberg. So
Yeah, that's you need to get a life. Alpha, you need a this is an intervention. I didn't want to tell you like this, but this is an intervention. But yeah, it's gerontocracy, to kind of go back in gerontocracy and kind of try to, give a summary on, not really a summary,
yeah,
more of a conclusion. What we're trying to say is that it is vital for us to elect more younger, politicians. There's this bad still stigma behind this idea that, younger politicians are or
brash and
stupid.
experienced.
Yeah, they're unexperienced. They'll make dumb, mistakes and all that. But the reality is that, first of all, that's part of learning. If they do make mistakes, it's part of learning. And let's be honest,
Yeah, we're not
there
asking them to be like head of state already. Just give them
yeah,
some position of power where they can
like
make real change.
like we're not gonna put like a 18-year-old in the, the global office, what the fuck,
Jesus
in the
Christ.
Oval Office and shit like that, because obviously that's not gonna happen and that's not
It would be
realistic.
hilarious, by the way, just putting a moody teenager as the president of the White House. Like, we can bomb Russia, I guess.
Yeah.
Press.
Yeah, so obviously we need to be realistic, but the reality is that there's a lot of good
I'm
examples
sorry.
where there's
National anthem is now My Chemical Romance. Everyone
bro,
bow.
oh, what the fuck. But the reality is that there's a lot of good examples where, where you can see that younger politicians do clearly have a better, understanding, first of all, of what the world needs, what the younger generations need. You
Yeah,
can see,
or what they are asking for.
you can see, yeah, you can even see like politicians which aren't even younger politicians, but politicians that are actually like empathetic and are able to showcase the empathy for the younger generations. They always have like this huge, like for example, like social media presence. Like for example, the best example I can think of is the current one of the current U.S. presidents.
Candidates?
Candidates, which is Williamson, which has a TikTok page and consistently talks about these issues that all our generation faces, and she has on record said that like I don't even do that shit on purpose. I'm not even out there be like, yes, I want to appeal to the younger generations. She just simply says what everybody's thinking, and
Yeah.
in a logical and in an actual way that makes sense. Like she puts down the facts. These are the issues, and this is how we fix it. And it's
And
not
let's
like
not forget the Among Us game with like AOC and all those streamers too, which kickstarted the whole thing.
Sure. I don't exactly know what that has to do with this, but okay, I'm gonna pretend like I do.
No, like a younger politician has started getting into
Uh, uh,
having an
yeah.
online presence. That's basically what kickstarted it.
I mean, yeah, there is like, yeah, sure. I guess no, I can see that. But yeah, AOC is definitely like the best example. She's like I mean, she was more active on Twitter, not so much these days, but yeah,
Yeah, the media
AOC.
darling.
AOC is like a good example. And again, it's like the thing is like these politicians aren't trying to be hip and cool. Like usually the politicians that try to be hip and cool are literally conservatives, but they fail miserably. But when usually a leftist does it, is not out of like, yes, I want to be hip and cool with the kids. No, they just are naturally, and they don't even have to try because they understand us and we understand them.
Would have
Um,
thought that leftist ideals usually align with the younger population's ideals.
Who would have thought that the woke left, sorry, aligns with?
The soy Bojack socialists.
It's so funny. Like I will talk about this in a couple minutes, but like the whole woke left thing is so funny to me.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's we need this. It's not something that we actually like. Oh, we should probably get. No, we need this. It's a life and death situation. We need to get younger politicians. We need to get out the old conservative, dementia patients out of the political power. Which and that sounds harsh, but that is literally true. Like that Diane fucking, what was her name again? Diane Feinstein apparently has dementia. Like that is why. Like why is she in power? Like it makes no sense, right? So it's you need to keep in mind that we need people that are truly aligned with the idea of for the people, from the people to fuck that, that's not how you say it. Hold on. Like okay, let's try to reword that. A person that truly cares about uh like focusing on the people and what they need, because the reality is that in a lot of situations most politicians don't really care what the actual people need, and they care about themselves, and we need more politicians that are actually like fucking worried as hell about the
Yeah.
current state of the world, and that they
Or
are.
in the
Yeah, go
most
ahead.
nihilistic sense, politicians that understand that they might not believe in what they're campaigning for, but they know that it's more popular amongst the younger generation.
Yeah,
Which,
which
like, we have this problem, at least here in Portugal, where a lot of our population is really old, and there isn't that much young people.
yeah,
And this, of course, comes from because of a century of poverty. More poverty usually means more children. Families have more children.
and then
Uh,
immigration
yeah,
in the
and
recession of 2009 and 8. So
yeah, and now we're reaching a point where a lot of people are going to die really quickly. And
Yes.
so who is to become the major,
Us,
like,
baby.
yes, it's the time for the young ones.
Yeah.
And so politicians either have to adjust and be able to present ideals that they might not believe in, but at least they can still get behind and present them to the younger generation, or there needs to be politicians that actually believe in these things and present them to the younger generation. And
Yeah.
let's be honest, it's politicians, so you can never be truly sure what they think.
Yeah. But you gotta trust them. Kind of, you have to. It's not something that you can really like. Oh yeah,
Yeah, you
let's
always gotta
now.
take things with a grain of
Yeah, you
salt.
have to. You have to trust them, but always with a sense of like
Yeah.
questioning everything they do. But yeah, basically it's something that I could talk about at the end of the blog in the conclusion, but it's basically this is a life and or death situation. It's not something that we can delay. It's something that we need right now because it has to do with the progression of human society. We are at a turning point in human history where we are literally, at the door of the sixth great extinction. And we, if
Us,
we
baby.
and
Sorry.
if we don't do anything, we're going to open that door and we're going to walk right through it and we're not going to come out the other side.
Yeah.
And we also, like for example, we talked about a little bit in the last episode about stuff like superconductors and all these different technologies that are coming out, which, is basically like the shit we see in like sci-fi movies. We're literally, again, at the door of all these crazy sci-fi-esque technologies. So we're there. We have it in our hands. And if we don't take these chains, these things that are holding us back, these conservative views, if we can't understand that we need to be more progressive, we can't understand that we're all human beings at the end of the day. Yes, we all have different cultures, we all grew up in different ways, but at the end of the day, we're one fucking species, and that is what matters. And we need to all understand that whether no matter how different we are from each other, we're all one fucking species, and therefore we're all similar in some ways, and we need to embrace that, and we need to put our differences aside, and we need to work together. We need to learn to love each other unconditionally, and we need to come together as a fucking species, and to be able to overcome these issues that we face every day. For example, it's currently summer and it's fucking hot and I hate it, and it's getting hotter and hotter and it's fucking
Yeah.
unbearable, and it's only going to get worse, and I fucking scared of it, honestly, because it's like, holy shit. And
Yeah.
it's we need to do this or we're going to go extinct.
Your ethnicity doesn't mean jack if you're burning too crisp.
So yeah, we're all gonna die, and we really need to stop voting for fucking sociopaths, which work for other sociopaths in big oil and the companies and all that shit.
You know,
So
this is actually something I've wanted to talk about. Red, are you familiar with the fable of the tyrant dragon?
no, what the fuck?
Okay. Tangent time. So, imagine the following. There is this land, long ago, a land of fantasy, with
Mhm.
uh, with knights in shining armor and a beautiful kingdom. And then one day, a giant dragon just plots down from the sky and burns everything to a crisp. The
Okay.
knights try to fight them. They band together, form a mighty army, but to no avail, because they can't pierce the dragon's armor. And the dragon demands every single day 1,000 people to be fed to him. And so, after many fights lost, the knights begin to help people reach the dragon, who is slumbering in a gigantic cave watching over the kingdom. And as time progresses, more and more people come to the reconciliation of the idea that they're going to be eaten by the dragon. And more people try to make things easier for those people. Railroad, Railroads are built to take people from the kingdom to the dragon. The families of those that are being eaten gets support, monetary support and psychological support, and children are taught that the dragon has its place international food chain, and that it's righteous and it's right that the dragon must eat us. And so time goes on. People start finding jobs in a field where they study about the dragon. They analyze every aspect of him. And the entire kingdom is built around this idea of this great evil, where everyone is just being tallied by random chance, and every single day 1,000 people are fed to the maws of the dragon. Until one day, scientists discover a material that can break the dragon's scales. So they test, and come to the conclusion that they have a way to kill the dragon. And the king, after being informed, calls a big old meeting like never seen before. The royal halls are packed with everyone from the kingdom. And both the scientists and the king's advisors have a chance to speak. First goes an advisor saying that this is the dragon. We have lived with him for so much time. It's righteous for him to eat us. And we have been taught this by our elders who know more than us. Besides, look at how many jobs we would lose if we kill the dragon. And also, our coffers are emptied, so we don't have any type of money to help kill the dragon. After that, the scientists came up, explained everything, and said that the project would be completed between 10 to 15 years. And lastly, came the last of the king's advisors that gave a speech about how it was not their place to try and slay the dragon. And then a child screamed, "The dragon is evil. The dragon killed my granny." And everyone started screaming too, and coming to the conclusion that, yeah, the dragon killed their loved ones. Everyone on that hall had lost someone to the dragon. And so it was declared, right there and then, by the king, that they would slay the dragon. And so the project started. The scientists built missiles that they would throw against the dragon so that no people had to fight him up close. And the people all throughout the kingdom gave direct support to the project. And many years went by, and the first prototype actually worked. And so, 1 year later, the date was set to throw the missile against the dragon. And on that day, a rainy day, while the missile was being prepared to be launched, a man shouted from the crowd watching to the king saying, "Please stop the train. My father is on it. Stop the train. There's no need for the train to go. The dragon is about to be slain. The missile will be there in 1 minute. Why are you staying the train?" And the king told him, "I'm so sorry, but I can't stop the train because the dragon can't suspect of anything. If we had started this project 1 minute earlier, your dad and everyone that train would be saved. But we didn't. We clung to our values, our conservative values, and to this ideal that we had built up in order to cope. And now we are suffering for it. But we're going to make things right." And so the train went. The people were killed by a dragon as usual. But then a missile flew up in the sky and slaughtered the dragon. And people began to rebuild a new future. And that was the fable of the tyrant dragon. What do you think from that?
I mean, it's a clear example of like, this. It's well, the dragon is a clear like representation of capitalism. This thing in place in society which causes thousands of deaths every day.
Not just capitalism. I think capitalism is too redundant. I think it's the representation of a system that people are too fearful to go against because it's said that it's right. May that
That's
be religion, may that be a political view,
yeah. I
may that
mean,
be
it's
whatever.
but in this case, I mean, you kind of just described what capitalism is in place in society. But yeah, I mean, I get what you mean.
Fable.
But I definitely feel like when the greater evil in that scenario truly is capitalism. It's the thing that obviously like religion has its, you know, it's in some countries and in some places in the world it definitely has its evils. But I don't think that it ever is nowadays, at least in the 21st century. It definitely isn't as big of an evil as capitalism, right?
Yeah.
This, in my opinion. 1,000 years ago, oh hell no, it was definitely not that. I mean, capitalism didn't even exist 1,000 years ago. It was feudalism. which is just, capitalism is just advanced. It's just feudalism 2.0. But so yeah, it's a cool story. Yeah, yeah, it's a great analogy. It's a good way to explain why
Yeah.
capitalism is bad in a
So
way that doesn't.
this fable was written in 2005 by Nick Bostrom, if I'm not mistaken, who was a Swedish philosopher, which was about aging and death, basically. I shortened it a lot. I recommend everyone to check out CGP Gray's video about the fable, which was how I found out about it. He narrates it beautifully and with great animation. But I think it's at the core of it all a fable about the fear of change.
Yeah,
Because imagine living in a world where every day you have something that's just part of your daily life. May it be mistreating a certain caste of people, may it be fear of the outsider, may it be a dragon slaying 1,000 people a day. And it represents the how hard for once it is to break out of the fear of those concepts, but also that we should do it as fast as possible. Because just like at the end of the fable, if they had started it 1 day sooner, 1 minute earlier, 1,000 more people would have been spared. If they had started it 1 year earlier, God knows how many others would have been spared.
yeah.
But still, we cling to this fear of things are the way that they are, and we let our dragons remain alive and wreak havoc on ourselves and on our societies.
Yeah, it's a great sort of analogy to the way the world is today and has always been. Unfortunately,
Yeah,
we've always had like this sort of this chill vibe when it comes to loving our oppressors. It's
like
it's not great. And then usually
red.
there's always a revolution that always comes to change
Yeah,
it, but the issue is, what will that revolution be when it comes to capitalism in a global scenario? Like, what will happen? Will it ever happen? Will it be too when it will it happen too late?
yeah,
It's scary to think about, and that's why we shouldn't find out.
yeah,
We should act today and try to change it. We should try to try
yeah,
to make sure that we don't start a minute too late and thousands of millions of people die from it.
yeah. A small anecdote. Red, you love Japan, right?
Yeah, yeah, sort of. I mean,
Yeah.
visually, aesthetically, yes, it's a cool country.
I too also enjoy Japan a lot, and
Mhm.
especially because I practiced Japanese martial arts for a good part of my life, and uh, I really like Japan. So imagine how uncool it was for me to learn that, the samurai, those honorable good guys,
Yeah,
yeah, they were part of the highest caste of societies.
yeah,
And if a peasant acted in a way that might offend the samurai, or better yet, if the samurai felt offended by someone which was of a lower caste, they had the right to kill them.
yeah,
And also, you couldn't just become a samurai, you had to be born into it.
yeah,
Yeah, and then there came a whole thing at the end of the 19th century, which basically ended with the eradication of the samurai. And that generated a big ass conflict that inspired the movie The Last Samurai, uh, which it's a great movie, but it's not that historically correct. But it's exactly that. You have a society where people are just born into privilege, and it's just the way it is.
yeah,
Can you imagine that? Can you imagine just like imagine a cop, right? Let's say a cop. You walk past a cop, and a cop just says, "You disrespected me," pulls out a handgun, and there's no fuss about it.
I mean, I don't have
He
to
kills.
imagine it happens every day.
No, no, no. But literally, no one bats an eye. There's a difference between a cop kills someone and everyone rains down on them. But imagine if you just walked past a cop, he shot you because he thought he disrespected you in broad fucking daylight, and no one cared. And it was custom for that to happen. And you couldn't become a cop. You had to be born into being a cop.
Yeah, it's pretty shit. Anyways, let's move on to the next topic,
Yeah.
which is still related to crazy conservatives. We want to talk
Memories.
about our favorite conservative, our favorite meatball, Ron DeSantis, uh, which is a giant piece of shit.
Yeah.
But so he's currently like the second biggest, sort of opposition to Donald Trump, which is a whole other can of worms because Donald Trump has, been indicted at least 3 times. I don't know if by the time this video comes out, if it's going to be 4, but it could be.
He's hilarious.
And if he would consecutively, like, if all the charges, the 78 charges, I believe, if he would do all the time, like, not at the same time, but like, after each other, it's like 680 plus years or some shit like that, that he has, that he would be in prison. But yeah, it's apparently I found out that like if Trump basically like if he got charged with murder, he can still be the president of the United States.
Yeah,
Like
you can still run for president while being
there's
in prison.
there's only one charge that like stops you from being able to be president, which is like treason, I believe. That's the only charge that stops you from being a president of the United States, which is crazy.
Yeah,
Like
I love
what the fuck?
America.
Like what the fuck? But yeah, like Ron DeSantis is an interesting character because Ron DeSantis is, well, first of all, he's the
A dick.
senator of Florida, and he is part of this new wave of conservatives, at least of like the 2020s, which is the sort of unmasking of the conservative movement. Whilst for years conservatives have been very I wouldn't say chill about it. They definitely haven't, but
Coy.
they would definitely hide it. They would definitely hide their
Yeah.
true intentions, and they will always try to be more diplomatic in some scenarios. Some other not so much, but in general, they would like a conservative would look at the KKK and be like, "Yeah, we don't endorse that shit."
Yeah,
But
for
there's a
PR reasons, of course.
whole new side of the conservative movement which is growing more and more, or is becoming the norm, is that they don't really hide it anymore. As some of you might know, Ron DeSantis started stuff like the "Don't Say Gay" bill, which are bills which basically make it so
What?
that a teacher can't talk about homosexuality or anything related to the LGBT community at school. They
Huh.
can't, even if the teacher themselves are queer. If, for example, if it's a male teacher who is married to a man, he can't have a picture of him and his husband on the table of his of his classroom table, because that's considered like this a crime or whatever.
Eh,
That's
I think this might be a bit of a hot take, but I don't like conservatives. I don't know why.
But yeah, that's one rule. Then he basically made it so it's illegal to be a drag queen. Basically, if you're caught, wearing clothes which is considered to be, of the opposite gender or whatever, it's like it's a display of being a drag queen, which is not good because it's sexual, and kids will be exposed to it, and that's bad, which is bullshit. Obviously, this is not that rule is not targeted towards drag queens. It's targeted towards trans people because they see, for example, a trans woman as simply a man dressed as a woman, and that to them is the same thing as a drag queen. So that's a really
Yeah.
bad law. Then they are now creating this narrative that queer people are groomers. It started off with trans people being groomers now, or first of all, it started with drag queens being groomers. Then it went to trans people being groomers, and now it's the entire, all queer people are groomers for even wanting kids to know that that a kid can have two mommies or two daddies or two parents of that are gender nonconforming, etc. So they see it as completely like this. This is pedophilia. This is horrible, and it's all what the fuck. This is all like this. They were basically creating this huge panic around these things, and then they also have like the talking points of like, yes, the woke left, blah blah blah, which is they've turned this like they can't even explain what being woke is. They don't they've used the term so much that they've tried they haven't really tried, but they've tried to change the definition of what being woke is as this like negative thing. But the reality is the definition of being woke is simply being aware of the current social issues. That is literally the definition of being woke. In fact,
But
the
that's
word
bad because we like ignorant people.
woke comes from being awake. It comes from being aware, being awake to the current issues. It's not this like like leftist thing. It's something that's just being aware of what the hell is going on. It's just being aware of like, oh, there's racism. Like if you recognize that there's racism and racism is bad, you're woke. If you recognize that women are paid
But
less,
racism,
that's
but
woke.
racism isn't real, right?
What the fuck about? But
I'm
it's
sorry, I just my God,
and
I can't
so
take it. I can't take it. I legit can't.
So there's this whole sort of panic being this woke panic being created and all that stuff, which is all false. It's these are all conservative sort of ploy sort of panics that they create to really sort of make you forget about the real issues.
Yeah.
And the best example to show that this is a bad issue, or that if you ever find yourself agreeing with conservative views, take a step back and think about it. What you're doing, because think about it. Conservatives, their conservative party, the Republicans and stuff like that. Who are the people that agree with them? Who are the people that sort of are on their side? It's Nazis, neo Nazis. And
Yeah.
in fact, when it comes to fucking Ron DeSantis, when they were doing like um, when they were doing like the whole Disney thing, like Disney is like transing our kids, etc. There was they were trying to boycott. There was like strikes or whatever you want to call, not strikes, but there was like what's it called? Not a
Uh,
rally. There was protests. Sorry, that's the word. There were protests at the front of Florida, um, Disneyland,
oh
and
yeah, I
and there
saw
was
that.
videos where you can see just straight up people waving swastikas, neo-Nazi like symbols, happily there, just showing, and at the same time, side by side, waving like Ron DeSantis 2024 flags.
But I've also come to the point where people are just like, but are Nazis really the bad guys? Which,
Yeah, it's
like,
insane
ugh.
how it's been not even 100 years since Hitler was in power of Germany, and how suddenly how much right wing ideals have suddenly risen again, mostly during COVID, which is I don't know exactly. I've not really looked much into it, but I'm sure there's like a logical sort of correlation to it. Obviously, it's not like, oh, it's the vaccines that made everybody right wing. No, that's not what I mean. But the fact that we were
No, but
all
of course it was like,
but
obviously.
the fact that we were all closed in our homes, the fact that we were all watching the news, a lot of people started watching the news during COVID, which is not something that they did. This includes my household. We didn't really watch the news like the typical, like turning on the TV and watching the news. We never did that. We only started doing that during COVID to sort of understand what was going on during during the pandemic, and so it's it's getting pretty bad. This kind of relates back to what we were saying before, and that everything's fucked right now. And the fact
We
that
made the fucky wucky.
10 years ago, that when somebody showed off being a Nazi, everybody would be like, point and laugh at the weirdo, point and laugh at
No,
the
you will
fucking
get
weirdo.
beaten the fuck up. That's a difference.
And nowadays, there's people that are like like showing off how proud they are to be Nazis. They're reading Mein Kampf like left and right, saying that it's a great book. Where like, huh? And these people who are like, first of all, they're falling into the classic and anti-Semitic, ideals of like, yeah, Jewish people run the world, which I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? What is this weird ass lizard people run the underworld type of bullshit that I'm listening to? Which is also a thing that 10 years ago everybody made fun of, but when it comes to putting.
No, but everyone knows that the lizard people around the world. Come on, get your shit together.
So it's to me it's insane, and then you have these people who keep saying that, yeah, like immigrants are the issue of every crime. Black people are genetically more predisposed to be criminals and aggressive, which is
Oh,
not true, and all these things, and then they're like literally waving Nazi flags, and if you ever question yourself if you agree with a conservative view, just remember that conservatives align themselves with Nazis. And if you still have any sort of logic
historically.
in your, yeah, historically and factually, like they do, there's like conservatives, a lot of conservatives are Nazis, and a lot of Nazis are conservative. Well, every Nazi
Yeah.
is a conservative. There's no leftist Nazis. That's not a thing.
Well,
uh,
actually, I'm a leftist. I'm a socialist Nazi.
I'm a socialist Nazi. And also, yes, the Nazi party was like the socialist nationalist party. That doesn't mean that they were actually socialist, right? Fucking uh uh their actions talk more than the fucking name. I don't know, at least to me. Uh
Yeah.
and yeah, it's pretty bad. It's not great. And Ron DeSantis, and unlike Trump, which, was always more, would at least want to distance himself from these people because he's stupid, but he at least has some sort of team behind it that tries to stop that shit from happening. Ron
Yeah.
DeSantis, for example, on Twitter has literally like recently retweeted a video that showed him off with I forget the name of it, but it's like the sun. It's like a weird sun flag, which is like a neo-Nazi.
The Japanese flag,
No,
the
no, 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 no,
imperial.
no. Hold on, sun flag. Sorry, I forget these terms. It's the black sun. It's if you watch my stream,
So
literally
black
like
sun. Oh yeah, yeah,
basically
yeah.
this
Yo, yo.
this sort of like ad. There's like this guy who created this ad, right? This video that was supposed to show off that Ron DeSantis is better than Trump. He's going to be our savior. He's going to do everything. And then there's this section right at the end of the video where you see a sun, you see Ron DeSantis in front of that sun, you see like these American military people, and then slowly you start seeing the black sun symbol just starting to show up in the back of the video on the sun, right? And it's like holy shit. And it was funny because like this originally when this like whole news came out, that Ron DeSantis had retweeted this video, there was like these screenshots that showed it very like it was very hidden. It was like very almost. I mean, it was like very well blended into the background. And people are like,
Yeah.
all right, so maybe he didn't notice it was like a frame that was hidden. But then you watch the full video and you're like, oh shit, it actually is there for like 10 seconds. It is very clear. And in fact, it doesn't just show up for a frame, it shows up for like 10 seconds and it gets progressively more and more like visible. At the end, it's basically right there. It's like full opacity, just a black, not neo-Nazi symbol just there. I don't even know if it's neo-Nazi. I think it's just a regular, good old Nazi symbol. Good old, what the fuck?
Good old Nazi symbol.
No, but
Oh my God.
it's not anything. You know what I mean? But it's not something that's new. So and then you're like, okay, Ron retweeted this, and there's two options. Either he didn't actually watch the video and just saw that somebody made a cool video and was like, ah, this seems cool, I'll retweet it. Or he saw it and is aware of it. I mean, the fact, I mean, he did like he like not re, he took down that retweet. So like he removed it, or unretweeted, or I don't know what the fuck the term is, but so somebody in his team was suddenly aware that, oh shit, we have retweeted a Nazi, propaganda video based on our fucking candidate.
Are
We
we
need
the
to
baddies?
we need to fucking take this down. And obviously there was no, statement or anything, but it's quite clear that they were aware of what happened. Right. And so DeSantis is aware that his fan base are a bunch of fucking neo-Nazis. And yeah, I don't know. It's the America is in a shit state. Italy is in a shit state. They're currently like undoing a shit ton of like progressive laws that they had, like like they're trying to take away like children from like lesbian mothers and shit like that.
Yeah,
And yeah, it's pretty bad. And
which let's just say is abhorrent, non-human, and I do not support the death penalty, but I can make exceptions.
all right, that's
Uh,
not you want to murder people so bad, Alpha. uh
I'm
but
looking for an excuse.
yeah, it's we need to look at these things and take a step back and just be like, hold up, what is happening? What is going on right now? Are we
Hold
sure that
up.
this is the right thing
Wait a
that to be
minute.
happening? Because it's insane. I'll be honest. I'll be honest. As a kid, when I grew up, we grew up during like Gamergate. We grew up like during these moments where like the internet was edgy as fuck, right? And the reality
Yeah.
is that in my most ignorant and quote unquote conservative days, I was never like anywhere close to this. I was never, I would, if I saw an issue, I was always able to look at it and be like, hold up, this doesn't make sense. Like, I remember being like, this was like 2015. This was before the 2016 America, like US elections, when like it was like between Hillary Clinton and Trump. And I remember like hearing a kid defend Trump at my school. And I was, again, how old was I then? I was, 2016 was
Young.
17 years ago, so I was like 10 or 11 years old, right? And being at a 10
It
year
was
old,
17 years ago?
seven,
Ah,
deaf motherfucker.
17. Jesus Christ.
So I was like 11 or 10 at the time. And so remembering that I was a 10-year-old being like, I don't really know much about politics, but it doesn't seem like supporting Trump for said reasons makes any sense, because they were like trying to be like, oh, it's because we don't want there to be a war between America and Russia. But I'm like, yeah, but
Uh,
you're sort of ignoring everything else. Like, that can't be a sole reason to vote for a fucking monster. Like, holy
no.
shit. It's like, yeah, it's like, oh yeah, we voted for Hitler because we wanted not we didn't want a Germany to be poor. But yeah, you're forgetting everything else. What the fuck? Like, it's, you can't just vote for somebody because of one thing and then ignore everything else and be like, oh,
Yeah.
it's just
There won't be a war. Yay! And we're gonna build a wall. Huh?
like, yeah, like, you gotta think of everything. Like, he's not just you're not voting for this one aspect, you're voting for the whole package. And the whole package allegedly is pretty small when it comes to Trump. I'm talking about
I
his
did not
penis.
know this. I found this
uh
humorous.
yeah, you remember like that one scandal about like the prostitute that he, or I don't know if, no, it wasn't a prostitute, sorry,
Porn star.
it was a porn star, exactly. Which apparently on Twitter she said that he had a small penis or whatever. uh and
Yeah.
whilst she could be lying, I mean, probably is true. Uh,
Yeah.
but it's pretty funny. And the thing is, like, to kind of conclude this episode, what I have to say is that yes, our world is in a completely horrendous state. There's wars all over the world. There's wars, in Ukraine. Currently, there's a military coup going on in Niger. I don't remember how to say the
Nigeria?
country. No, not Nigeria, because there's Nigeria and there's Niger. Or I
Yeah.
don't. I'm really
Ah,
bad when it
ah,
comes to.
I'm not gonna try to say that name.
Yeah. I'm really bad when it comes to, like, I really feel bad about it, and it's something that I really want to learn more about. Which is like African geography, and how, like, and how
Yeah.
African history is, because we don't really study that in Europe, and I really want to learn more. But there's also, still shit going on in the Middle East. There's still a shit ton of human rights,
Crime. Crime. War
like,
crimes
yeah,
is
like
happening.
war crimes, like crimes against the human rights and humanity going on all over the planet. And the reality is, yes, it's very easy to look at all these negative things and be like, oh, it's pointless. We're all fucked anyways. Let's just keep going until we're all dead. But honestly, I've never had that idea. I've never had that sort of mentality. If I did, I wouldn't have created Politdigm. I wouldn't have had created this company, because I created this company because I think there's still hope. I think that we not only that we get ourselves in a situation, I think that we also, in a lot of situations, show brilliance and show the capacity to overcome it. And I truly do think that we can overcome it, but we need to come together. We need to band together as people, and we need to fight back for what is, rightfully ours, which is
So it
our,
is our world.
It's
Like,
our world, it's our planet, it's our well-being, it's our dignity as human beings and as beings. And it's not just fighting for us as human beings, it's also fighting for our fellow species on this planet, which are always also gonna suffer from this situation. They're whether you want to compare them to us or not, because they're fish are fucking stupid. Yes, they're fucking stupid, but so are humans, and their lives as
what's wrong with
tiny
fish?
tiny little helpless fish, they're also valuable to us, and they still deserve to live without being fucking boiled alive because the water is too hot.
Yeah.
And
You like
so
fish, don't you? I like fish. I don't want fish to go extinct.
I don't even like eating fish. That's how much I love. No, they don't taste good, in my opinion.
Uh,
But yeah, it's like we need to fight. We need to fight for our rights. We need to fight for what is rightfully ours. We need to fight for living in a world where we don't have to work every day to be able to just give our children food. That should be something that's free. We should not have to pay for the basic human essentials. We should not have to pay to have to drink water, which is a basic human need. We should not have to pay for food, which is a basic human need. We should not have to pay for fucking housing. That's a basic human need. We should not have to
you see
pay
a
for these
pattern
things.
here.
These are things that are that we should have without ever having to worry about. And if you're like, oh, but it's not fair because I worked hard for these things, and these other people that didn't work hard, they don't deserve it. No, we all deserve it. We all deserve it, no matter who we are. We all deserve these things. It's not about who deserves it or who doesn't. These are basic human needs. And
Our basic human right.
if we can't attend to our basic human needs, and we can't make sure that every human is fed, is hydrated, isn't going to die because they're sleeping in the fucking wilderness or whatever, or they're sleeping in the middle of the streets of a huge concrete jungle. If we can't figure that shit out, we're fucked. Like it's a basic thing that we need to figure out. It's a more our basic needs. If you have ever studied anything related to to
People.
psychology, when it comes to, for example, the fuck, what's it called, the pyramid, fuck, was his, the fucker's name,
You're not
Maslow, the
talking to
pyramid,
the right person.
the pyramid of Maslow, which is basically this pyramid of like necessities, right? Where right at the bottom is taking a piss, taking a shit, eating, sleeping, drinking water, etc. Right, and then you have like slightly more like like other necessities, and the more up we go, we start having like, are we fulfilled? Did we play enough games today? Shit like that. Which, when it comes to a random guy in a tribe in the middle of Africa, which has never even seen electricity in his life, he doesn't care about that shit. He cares about survival. And the fact that some people are like, wake up every day and they're like, oh, my life is so pointless. I got nothing to do. I might as well kill myself. And then there's people who every day have to walk for kilometers and kilometers, have to fight against little fucking animals to be able to get their basic human needs. Is shows a huge failure, as that we're huge failures as a species. In
Yeah.
my opinion, it's all of us should be able to just focus on what we love. We should focus on the mind. We are technologically advanced enough to be able to just every day wake up, and the only thing we have to worry about is what we're going to do today to have fun. And that, to me personally,
So
that
you're
is
a hedonist.
no idea what that means. But to end off, we can explain it in a
Perfect.
second.
Yeah.
Well, we can explain in a second. But basically, to me, what the perfect utopia is a scenario where we don't have to worry about food, we don't have to worry about water, we don't have to worry about anything, we don't have to worry about being boiled alive because of global warming. We can just wake up
Or
every
frozen to
day.
death because of climate change.
We can just wake up every day and do what we love, focus on growing the mind, about getting more knowledge about about exploring the cosmos. That is what we as humans should strive for, and not strive for making a random 15-year-old girl's life in the middle of fucking fuck knows which little town in the US, which she just happens to be trans, and so let's create fucking laws to fuck her life up. That is not what we should be doing. Yeah, what was the word you just fucking said?
Hedonism. It's basically the pursuit of pleasure.
That could be taken out of context. Sorry.
No, like sexual pleasure is used as a great example.
Yeah, it's like that's at the end of the day, like any more developed country, that's what most people worry about. In the like people that are rich, that's what they worry about. Is like, oh, will I feel happy today? Will I not be depressed today? And the reality is that a lot of the reason why we feel so miserable on a day-to-day basis is because of capitalism, is because there's these systems in place which have made us miserable because we're constantly worried about these things that we shouldn't be. And we can't
Yeah.
focus on making ourselves feel fulfilled. Yeah. I think that's a good message for the end of the podcast, which means that we're coming to the outro, which means that we have to plug the Patreon.
I
As
love plugging the Patreon.
we love plugging in the Patreon. So as you know, we have a Patreon. It's in the description
The what
below.
now?
A Patreon. We got a Patreon.
No.
Have you heard of this? Do you know that we had a Patreon?
No, no, no. You just murdered the word.
Oh, okay. But yeah, we have a Patreon, and you can support us. We don't obviously we're sort of in the infancy of Politdigm, so obviously we're not gonna get any, there's not don't expect anything crazy. But the coolest thing to me about our Patreon is that you get to join our private community where you can talk to us directly, where we'll have access to like debate channels and stuff like that. But most importantly, you'll have access to our Q&A, our podcast Q&A. Obviously there's no Q&A in this episode, and hasn't been any Q&As in the last episodes because there hasn't been any patrons on any questions yet. But when we do have questions at this section of the video before the outro, we will answer your questions. We will try to answer them as best as we can, and we will have fun with you whilst making cool content, and
Yeah.
hopefully trying to inspire people to make the world a better place. So yeah, and of course you'll also, if you get the Patreon, you're supporting us, which means that we can, we can help grow the company, we can help grow Politdigm, we can, inspire more people and
Yeah.
just keep growing from there. And yeah, thank you. Thank you. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, anything you want to say, Alpha, before we end the episode?
Nah, once again, thank you for listening. Have a great day, great night, or great evening.
And I'll see you all in the next episode. Goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye.